Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, the Israel Defense Forces has delivered a crushing blow to Hamas in Gaza. Operation Gideon's Chariots has focused on securing strategic areas of the Gaza Strip and eradicating the terror group. Last week, the IDF announced that it eliminated the commander of Hamas in Gaza, Mohammed Sinwar, in Israeli airstrikes. Mohammed was the younger brother of Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the October 7th massacre in Israel, and the current leader of the Hamas terror organization. His body was discovered in a tunnel under Khan Yunis, along with the remains of several other Hamas operatives. The Jewish state is facing harsh criticism over its military campaign to destroy the terror group in Gaza, and several countries have threatened to sanction Israel for its defensive measures against Hamas. Yochanan has more on that.
Yes, Rebekah, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada are demanding that Israel stop the war against Hamas in Gaza. In a joint statement, the trio claimed IDF operations in the terrorist-run enclave are wholly disproportionate. They threatened to take concrete measures, including sanctions, if Israel does not end its military actions. The three world leaders also said they are opposed to the expansion of Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria and reaffirmed their commitment to recognizing a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was quick to react. He said, by asking Israel to end a defensive war for our survival before Hamas is destroyed, London, Ottawa, and Paris are offering a huge prize for the October 7th genocidal attack on Israel, while inviting more such atrocities.
Iranian officials have vowed to continue enriching uranium with or without a nuclear deal. U.S. President Donald Trump has given the Islamic Republic every opportunity to choose the path of diplomacy over war. He facilitated several rounds of direct negotiations with the radical Shiite state and presented a proposal to halt Tehran's nuclear weapons program in exchange for sanctions relief. This comes as frightening intelligence released by the International Atomic Energy Agency reveals that Tehran is on the verge of nuclear breakout. The IAEA reported that Iran has accelerated its uranium enrichment process and has increased its stockpile of weapons-grade uranium by nearly 100 pounds since the beginning of this year.
A ministerial committee for legislation in the Israeli Knesset has presented a bill designating Qatar as a terror-supporting state. Doha has been allowed to lead negotiations between Israel and Hamas, despite funding the Iranian terror group in Gaza. If passed, this measure would create the legal establishment of a category of terror-supporting countries and would ban them from trade and diplomacy. The legislation accuses Qatar of directly supporting terrorist organizations and of investing more than $1 trillion to advance global jihad through donations to American colleges and lobbying groups in the United States.
Beirut has reportedly been offered major incentives to disarm Hezbollah, normalize ties with the Jewish state, and join America's plan for regional security. According to reports in the Lebanese media, the White House will no longer tolerate Beirut's evasive policies, allowing the Iranian-backed Hezbollah terror group to operate with impunity. Washington is reportedly demanding that Beirut take public, unequivocal steps towards regional normalization in exchange for foreign investment and economic support.
Harvard is paying a high price for allowing anti-Semitism and discrimination to run rampant on its campus. The Ivy League institution was informed that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services was terminating $60 million in federal grants for failing to address harassment and ethnic discrimination. The once prestigious university became a breeding ground for pro-Hamas sentiment in the aftermath of the genocidal attack on Israel. The school's administration allowed Harvard's campus to be taken hostage by crowds chanting "Death to Israel." U.S. President Donald Trump accused American academia of embracing anti-American and radical ideologies. So far, he has frozen nearly $3 billion in federal grants and contracts to Harvard.
Israel's Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, known as the Mossad, has announced the recovery of the official Syrian archives on Israel's most famous spy, Eli Cohen. This decades-long covert operation led to the repatriation of dozens of Cohen's personal effects, including photographs and thousands of original documents related to his case. The Mossad confirmed that it cooperated with a foreign intelligence service to recover the effects of the Israeli hero. Several sources have claimed that the Syrian government approved of the operation in a gesture of goodwill towards President Trump. These archives were presented to Cohen's widow, Nadia, last week on the 60th anniversary of his execution in Damascus. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad Director David Barnea personally delivered Cohen's effects to Nadia, and they vowed to continue searching until his remains are finally returned to Israel.
In medical news, researchers at Hebrew University and the IDF Medical Corps have made a major breakthrough in treating hemorrhagic shock. This life-threatening condition caused by massive blood loss is the leading preventable cause of death in trauma cases worldwide. Scientists participating in the controlled study found that the activation of the PKC protein significantly improves initial survival rates as well as hemodynamic stability after major blood loss. They discovered that subjects treated with a peptide to activate this protein showed a dramatic increase in survival rates. They also experienced increased heart tissue function, suggesting that this protein helps maintain energy levels in organs and protects tissue from damage caused by hemorrhagic shock. The Israeli scientists believe these advancements could save lives on and off the battlefield.
Israel was awarded second place in the Eurovision Song Competition in Basel, Switzerland last week. Israel's contestant Yuval Raphael is a survivor of the Hamas genocide at the Nova Music Festival on October 7, 2023. She survived by hiding underneath dead bodies in a roadside bomb shelter for hours. Yuval performed A New Day Will Rise, a song of hope for the future of the state of Israel and the world. Her outstanding performance earned her the highest public vote of the contest. The judges, however, ranked Yuval among the lowest. The combined scores put her in second place. Raphael said she has never been prouder to be the voice of the Jewish nation and that she will be grateful for this moment and for the people of Israel every day of her life.
Scientists have discovered evidence of a 1,500-year-old Christian community with extensive trade ties in Israel's Negev desert. Archaeologists excavating 6th-century Christian tombs in the Arad Valley discovered 2 ancient statuettes made from ebony. Experts at Tel Aviv University tested this rare wood, and they found it originated in Sri Lanka or India. A team of German and Israeli archaeologists researching the unique artifacts believe these statues were carved in Africa and brought by Christians to the Holy Land. Their academic article, published in Israel Antiquities journal Atikot, asserts that trade in the ancient Middle East was much more advanced than previously thought.
Vienna has announced the launch of the Austrian Parliamentary Israel Allies Caucus. This global network is committed to supporting Israel through faith-based diplomacy and shared Judeo-Christian values. The Israel Allies Foundation has cultivated an alliance of legislators from 56 parliaments around the world who promote pro-Israel policies through legislation, public advocacy, and diplomatic engagement. Austria's move comes as global momentum for faith-based diplomacy has skyrocketed. 6 new Israel Allies caucuses are expected to launch in African nations in the coming month, joining 56 countries and 1,500 legislators worldwide. Josh Reinstein, the president of the IAF, praised Austria, saying at a time when Israel faces increasing international pressure and hostility, the establishment of the Austrian Parliamentary Israel Allies Caucus signals a principled stand. He said this is not just about foreign policy, it's about choosing truth, democracy, and shared values over political expediency.
The State of Israel is preparing to celebrate Yom Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem Day, marking 58 years since the Holy City was reunited and restored as the undivided capital of the Jewish people. Jerusalem is a bastion of religious freedom and tolerance under Israeli rule, where all faiths and holy sites are protected. A state ceremony will take place on Ammunition Hill in honor of soldiers who fell in 1967 during the liberation of Jerusalem. Parades will be held throughout the city, leading to the Western Wall, where celebrants waving Israeli flags will gather to pray. Biblical prophecy continues to be fulfilled in the land of Israel, and just as Zechariah said, the streets of Jerusalem are crowded with playing children. The prophet Jeremiah also foretold of tomorrow's events, saying the gates of Zion will be graced by dancing. The Almighty said, I will turn your mourning into joy and give you gladness in place of sorrow. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Mikey Oster. He's the CEO of Saffron Tech. Mikey, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell our viewers a little about what is Saffron Tech?
So saffron is the most expensive spice in the world. It's produced predominantly in Iran. Saffron Tech is here to break the Iranian monopoly and produce saffron instead of in the fields, high terrains, specific weather. We've developed a technology to produce it indoors, fully controlled environment, instead of once a year, 4 times a year, enter into the spice world, but also into the nutraceutical and pharmaceutical world because of the medicinal values that are known already of saffron.
So we have this term, disruptive technologies. What does that really mean, and how does that apply to Saffron Tech?
So when you have a technology that basically changes the way the world operates or the world wants to operate, that to me is disruptive. We are here to do that. We're here to basically say, you know what, you don't need to rely on a specific country that will provide it to the world. Happens to be a country that we are not very happy with, one. As Zionists, we want to do stuff here. We want to do it in Israel, and we want to disrupt the existing technology in the world. And this is what we're doing.
This is very interesting because Iran is obviously a big enemy of the West. It's an enemy of Israel, yet people still buy a lot of saffron from them. This could change that. Why is this so important?
So the reason it is so important is because you need 100 to 120,000 flowers to be able to make 1 kilogram of dry saffron. That means about 50,000 per pound. That is why it is so expensive. That is why it is so important for somebody else to be able to produce it in a much less climate-dependent place and in a much smaller space that you can do it indoors like us. We produce it on 10 stories high within one building. So in a 5-acre facility or 1-acre facility, if you will, we produce more than 100 times what is produced in nature per meter. It's, again, due to the specific weather, et cetera. So there's only very specific places in the world, not only Iran, but 80% of it is Iran. We would like to do the change to that to not only hurt the Iranian economy, to help our own economy.
I love this about Israel. We're the startup nation, and we don't just come up with new technologies. We actually come up with technologies that will have, even additional benefit, like hurting the Iranian economy so they can't support terrorism. Why is ingenuity so important in Israel?
I think it comes sometimes from a place of need. We did desal in the past. Why? Because somebody was about to block our water. We do solar. Why? Because there's a limit to how much energy you can produce from coal and how bad it is for the world. We find the places where we can benefit from as a country, as a world, and we find where it actually overcomes, not necessarily hurts our enemies, but overcomes our enemies' potential damage to us.
There's something biblical about what you're doing, too. This isn't just, when people think of saffron, they think of fine dining. But saffron's from the Bible. Can you tell us about that?
Saffron actually used to be part of the incense of the Beis Hamikdash, of the temple. So the ketoret, the incense that was used in the temple, had, according to the Torah itself, had 4 ingredients, and according to the Gemara later interpreted, it had 11 ingredients. One of them is the Sativus Caucus, the saffron, the za'afran. And absolutely, the Cohen, the high priest, could not produce any of the special activities without using the ketoret, and that was one of the pieces of it.
Something interesting about what you're doing is not just that you can destabilize the economy of Iran, but if you can produce saffron for way cheaper than people are paying today, what kind of impact does that have globally?
So I think at the end of the day, saffron, like many other high-end products, spices, etc., depends on the quality. The quality of our saffron, because it's produced indoors, because we've developed this special protocol to grow it 4 times a year, consistent, the corms are clean, etc., basically gives us a much higher quality product. The saffron in the world sells for anywhere from $1 a gram to $50, $60, and $70 a gram, which is $70,000 a kilogram. We are going to be producing the highest end product for much cheaper than the highest end price. We're not going to compete with the cheapest and the counterfeits that are being done today because they're bought by suitcases from Iran. We're not going to compete with that, but we are definitely going to be much better, much cheaper, and much more consistent, if you will, than the higher end saffron that exists today.
Is this a theory or is this something that's being done today? Are you actually producing saffron?
We are. We're producing it we have one facility on the Otef Aza, right around the Gaza border, near Ashkelon, a kilometer from Ashkelon. That's one facility. That's an R&D facility. When the war broke out, we were supposed to start a pilot center there. Well, the war broke out, made things much more difficult. And as a result of that, 15 miles up near Gadara, we have our pilot plant. So we have a facility that works. We have a facility that can produce, but we're not commercial yet. We're planning to, in the next few weeks, to sign up a significant commercial production facility construction.
Mikey, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Here's the deal. We're here to stay like many other Israeli companies and inventions, and we're here to do something that I believe is as Zionistic as it gets, as counter-terrorist as it gets from a non-pure military perspective. In other words, we're here to stay and we're here to grow the saffron, and anyone who's interested is more than welcome to visit our site. We're doing a lot of things. Visit our site website and visit our physical site, which is mentioned here below. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikey, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
Iran has been sanctioned by the United States and other world powers multiple times since the founding of the Islamic Republic. What was once a thriving modern society was replaced by an oppressive and intolerant Islamic regime. The militants overthrew the pro-American Pahlavi dynasty and replaced the Shah with an extremist theocratic government led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The United States first imposed sanctions against the Islamic Republic in November of 1979 after radical Shiite Muslims stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. U.S. President Jimmy Carter signed executive orders banning trade with this new Islamic Republic and froze over $8 billion in Iranian assets. Crippled by the sanctions, the fledgling Islamic State agreed to negotiate. The American hostages were finally released in 1981 in exchange for the cancellation of sanctions as part of the Algiers Accords. This capitulation set a dangerous precedent for future negotiations with the Islamic Republic and left Americans at risk. Then, in 1996, President Bill Clinton once again imposed sanctions against Iran. 1 year later, Congress overwhelmingly voted to impose sanctions against companies doing business with Iran. The U.S. also banned trade and investment, citing the oppressive Islamic government's support of international terrorist groups, including Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In 2013, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 400-20 in favor of imposing even harsher sanctions against Iran. 4 months later, economically crippled by sanctions, Iran accepted the Interim Joint Plan of Action Agreement, brokered by former President Barack Obama. Tehran entered formal talks with the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Unfortunately, the world powers chose the path of appeasement, thinking they could rein in the radical Shiite state, which was pouring everything it had into its nuclear weapons program and increasingly calling for the destruction of Israel and America. In July of 2015, the P5+1 2021 announced that it had reached an agreement with Iran known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. $29 billion in previously frozen Iranian funds were released. Sanctions on Iranian oil exports were lifted, and companies were once again allowed to do business with the dangerous Islamic Republic. The International Atomic Energy Agency, who were supposed to be enforcing the agreement, were shut out. In 2018, under the Trump administration, the United States acknowledged that Iran had been dishonest about its covert weapons program. President Donald Trump formally withdrew from the JCPOA, explaining that the horrible one-sided deal should never have been made. President Trump initiated a new round of harsh sanctions which devastated the Iranian economy. The world's largest state sponsor of terror was suddenly broke. Sensing weakness from the new administration of President Joe Biden and desperate for leverage, Iran detained 5 American citizens and held them for ransom. Eager to appease the Islamic Republic, Biden agreed to unlock $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds in exchange for releasing the U.S. hostages. Only a month later, on October 7th of 2023, Hamas terrorists infiltrated the Jewish state under the cover of rocket fire from Gaza. The Iranian-funded attack resulted in the massacre of more than 1,200 people inside Israel. Iranian-trained terrorists raped, murdered, beat, and wounded hundreds of people and forced 240 hostages into the Gaza Strip. Houthi pirates have hijacked freighters and launched Iranian-made weaponized drones at commercial cargo ships, prompting international intervention in the Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb Straits. All of this chaos in the Middle East has cost the world economy billions of dollars. Despite overwhelming evidence that Iran was behind the October 7th massacre in Israel, President Biden chose to release another $10 billion to Iran just 1 month after the genocidal attack. Because of the Biden administration's campaign of appeasement, Iran's rogue nuclear program has progressed, and the International Atomic Energy Agency now admits that Iran has enough fissile material for several nuclear weapons, and Iran could destroy major population centers in Israel, Europe, and beyond. Even more troubling is that Tehran could have more weaponized uranium than we know about. One thing is for certain. The radical Shiite state of Iran continues to race full speed ahead, hell-bent on its goal of destroying Israel and then the West. Up next, the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
We're here in Tel Aviv. In a kitchen cooking meals for soldiers in Gaza and in the north and prepping Shabbat meals. And I am here with people representing 12 nations across the world, coming to sow hope to a land that has been filled with mourning and grief, and coming really to just serve the people of this land and to show them that they're not alone.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
And right after October the 7th, as a believer, it broke my heart. I decided to come on this tour because I know it's hard for Israel to be in this war, and I know God wants to help His people, and I will be a part of that. I will give help and comfort in a practical way.
When October 7th occurred, we really didn't understand the significance because The media has been so prejudiced against Israel. We didn't know what was true and what was not true. I didn't know. I had said I had to find out for myself. As Christians, we are a part of Israel. Israel has got to be supported by Christians around every country in the world.
We stopped into the kibbutzim Beri, and it was just we saw the after effects of the evil attack that Hamas did on these people, and it's just on this unprovoked attack that they did, and I just could not fathom what those folks went through. I cannot fathom what the hostages are going through right now, what the families are going through. I mean, if I could say anything to those families, I'd say we love you. We're praying for you. If there's something more that we can do, please speak up. Please say something, because I know many folks who cannot be here, they want to support. Our team is made up of 23 people of 11 different plus nations, and we're all saying that we support Israel. We love Israel.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, care for evacuees with food, shelter, clothing, and trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.